There are moments when the entire history of human civilization shrinks to the size of a tiny cabin flying over an alien world. Moments when the fate of billions of technological hopes and the lives of two pioneers depend not on engine power nor on superpower budgets, but on the cold blood of a single man whose fingers rest on the manual control stick. In the last chapter, we left Michael Collins in agonizing, absolute solitude in lunar orbit, while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin began their descent into the abyss. The Lunar Module Eagle undocked and hurtled toward an uncharted surface, facing trials that no simulator on Earth could ever prepare them for. Today, you will witness 12 minutes of the purest, most concentrated terror in the history of space exploration. You will find out how the ship's digital brain betrayed the crew at a critical altitude, what deadly trap the lunar surface had prepared, and why grown, hardened men at Mission Control in Houston literally forgot how to breathe as they watched the fuel supply dwindle away. Welcome to Chapter 4 of our documentary series, Apollo 11, 18 Seconds to Catastrophe. At an altitude of 10,000 meters above the dead lunar desert, Eagle was on a perfect ballistic arc. The autopilot guided the spacecraft downward, the engine ran smoothly, and Armstrong and Aldrin, holding their breath, cross-checked the instrument readings. But space does not forgive perfect scenarios. Suddenly, the silence of the cabin was shattered by the sharp, piercing blare of an onboard alarm, and an ominous yellow master caution light flashed on the instrument panel. The computer threw an error, code 1202. At that moment, the astronaut's heart skipped a beat. By modern standards, the Apollo guidance computer was cruder than a chip in a digital wristwatch. Its RAM was just a few kilobytes. And right now, this tiny brain was overloaded. Due to a ridiculous fluke, the rendezvous radar was left turned on, literally flooding the processor with an avalanche of useless data. The computer began to choke, rebooting and wiping key navigation programs from its memory. Neil Armstrong immediately called Earth. His voice, usually ice-cold, carried a distinct tension.
Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm. What is it?
Roger, 1202, we copy it.
In Houston, a wave of panic surged in a split second. A 1202 error meant the computer could crash at any moment, leaving the multi-ton module uncontrolled to crash into the moon. According to the manual, this called for an immediate abort. The astronauts would have to fire the ascent stage and flee back to Collins, admitting defeat.
I think it caught both of us unawares. It diverted our attention from whatever else we were doing, and primarily at that point, I was doing a sequential scan of in the cockpit and relaying to Neil what the computer was displaying so that he was able to begin to look and adjust to the scene he was seeing out the window right away.
The decision had to be made here and now. Houston had less than 20 seconds before the situation became irreversible. At that exact moment, the entire weight of responsibility fell on the shoulders of 24-year-old guidance officer Steve Bales, sitting at the Guido console. The young man, pale from realizing the scale of the impending catastrophe, frantically flipped through flight manuals. He remembered a simulation where a similar overload had been modeled. Bales knew, as long as the error was intermittent, the computer was still executing its highest priority task, maintaining engine thrust. Steve Bales took a deep breath, pressed his comm button, and said firmly to the flight director, "Houston, we are go on that alarm. As long as it doesn't stay on constantly, we continue the descent."
The early part of our descent, we're face down, and I might add that we also, because we're engaged in this first rather audacious maneuver of powered descent for the first time, we felt that, things could possibly not happen exactly the way things might want them to, so we wanted everything in our favor.
Altitude now 33,500 feet. We're still go, altitude 27,000 feet.
Same alarm, and it appears to come up when we have a 1668 up.
Roger, copy.
At an altitude of about 200 meters above the surface, the computer momentarily stabilized, and Armstrong could finally look out the window to assess where the autopilot was taking their ship. What he saw made the commander's blood run cold. Blinded by errors, the computer's navigation system was steering Eagle straight into West Crater, a massive, deep crater that was literally littered with giant, sharp boulders the size of automobiles. Landing in such a zone meant absolute death. If even one of the module's 4 footpads stepped on such a boulder, the multi-ton vehicle would instantly tip onto its side, rupturing the hull and damaging the fuel tanks. Launching from the moon in a fallen module was impossible. Armstrong and Aldrin would be left to die in this stone trap, live on camera before the eyes of the entire world. The autopilot stubbornly dragged the ship into the trap. There were only a few dozen seconds left before impact. There was no time to lose. At an altitude of 150 meters, Neil Armstrong makes the most critical decision of his life. In one swift motion, he flips a switch on the panel, shifting the module's control into fully manual mode. He turns off the autopilot.
But once Neil took over, it was up to him to, through changing attitude control, to null out those translation rates. And that's a significant increase in the talent level needed. He was certainly up to it.
Armstrong pitches Eagle forward, forcing it into a horizontal flight path, skimming over the ominous rocks of West Crater in search of an even relatively flat spot. But this maneuver tears up the entire flight plan. Flying horizontally demands an enormous consumption of fuel, which was already critically scarce. At that moment, a living hell begins inside the landing stage tanks. Due to the drop in pressure and the fierce heat from the firing engine, the highly toxic propellant begins to boil, and its level plummets at a catastrophic rate. In Houston, the controllers froze. The ground computer ran a ghost, shadow countdown of the engine's remaining burn time. A critical level lit up on the screens. When Capcom Charlie Duke, the astronaut serving as Mission Control's direct link to the crew, spoke over the radio, his words sounded like a death sentence.
60 seconds. Lights on.
They had only 1 minute of fuel left. The ship was still hovering in the air, and below them was the great unknown. Inside the cabin, a stark division of labor took hold. Armstrong remained silent, his entire being concentrated on the control stick, his heart rate soaring to a staggering 150 beats per minute. Buzz Aldrin turned into a living computer, reading out the parameters in a monotonous, emotionless voice.
We're go, same type, we're go.
2,000 feet, 2,000 feet, into the ag, 47 degrees.
Roger.
47 degrees.
A deathly silence fell over Mission Control in Houston. People were afraid to stir, worried they might make a single sound. Charlie Duke calls out again.
30 seconds.
Forward.
If the engine doesn't shut down on the ground in half a minute, it will shut down in mid-air, and then Eagle will simply plummet down from the height of several stories. And it was during these final critical 30 seconds, at an altitude of just 10 meters, that the nature of the moon dealt its final, devastating blow. The white-hot exhaust of the engine, firing at maximum thrust, slammed into the lunar soil. In the absolute vacuum of space, the ultrafine lunar dust, accumulated over billions of years, did not rise in a billowing cloud as it would on Earth. Instead, it shot out from beneath the spacecraft at tremendous speed, forming a dense sheet of dust flying parallel to the ground. Aldrin kept calling out data through the fog.
40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Great shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little.
And suddenly, in the grey dimness of the cabin, a soft blue light flashes. Buzz Aldrin exhales.
Contact light.
The Eagle had touched the moon. They did it.
Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
It happened on July 20th, 1969, at 2017-40 Greenwich Mean Time.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
At Mission Control in Texas, a pause hung in the air for a fraction of a second, as if people could not believe it had actually happened. And then the room erupted into cheers, applause, whistles, and the stomping of feet. Hardened flight directors embraced each other, waving American flags. Charlie Duke, barely catching his breath and stumbling over his words from the overwhelming emotion, replied to the crew.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
The touchdown itself, from my point of view, was a real high in terms of elation. Not so much for the instant, but because it marked the achievement that 250,000 people had been working for a decade to accomplish. And it was a feeling of, we, 250,000 people, managed it.
They had done it. Despite the rebellion of the onboard computer, the stone traps, and the blinding dust curtain, humans had, for the first time in history, stepped onto the soil of another celestial body. But their ultimate trial lay ahead, stepping out onto a surface where every single step could prove fatal, and the most terrifying part of all, attempting to fire an ascent engine that had never been tested in a true lunar environment. In the 5th episode of our series, we'll reveal the dramatic, untold story of the crew's journey home. You'll discover how one careless move nearly stranded the astronauts on the moon, the tiny object that unexpectedly saved their lives, the blazing plasma inferno they endured on the way back to Earth, and why, instead of a hero's welcome, they were met by people in protective suits and placed into strict quarantine. Subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss the continuation of this incredible story. Hit the like button on this video and be sure to let us know in the comments. What do you think truly gave the astronauts the strength to maintain such absolute, ice-cold composure when disaster was only seconds away? What was their main inner anchor and motivation? Flawless professional conditioning, the colossal weight of responsibility to all mankind, or something hidden deep beneath the surface, away from the eyes of the crowd? Stay with us. Our cosmic odyssey is only gaining momentum. See you on the moon.